Okay, hello everyone. I'm Leah Bilbao, health coach, certified health coach, and I have the pleasure tonight to have a special guest, Joanna Corp. She's a sleep and recovery coach, and we'll be we'll be discussing some, let's say, I wouldn't say secrets, but I have the big question if we can ever wake up without an alarm. And I think there'll be more than essential oils tonight that we're going to discuss. Feel free to give us your questions in the chat or just raising your hand. And I just, for you to know a little bit about me, the moment I started using essential oils, I couldn't go back to anything else. I need them, I love them, and I see that it's not even neutral. It's not that I choose one thing or another. I choose essential oils because they have so many benefits, and they speed up any process. So tonight we are going to talk about sleeping. Essential oils will be a supplement, or something we can totally use at night and during the day maybe, but together with other things we have to consider in order to have a good night's sleep. So this is Joanna. Let me do the presentation here. Okay, here we go. And Joanna, would you like to introduce yourself? How you got started with being a sleep coach?
Yeah, so you don't hear very often about sleep coach exist. You hear holistic coach, health coach, personal trainer, fitness coach, nutrition coach. Sleep coaches are taking over the world slowly, one at a time. So just to let you guys know who I am in the States. So I do live in Texas, and I have a background heavy in fitness. So I started off in the weight room coaching people on workouts. And it wasn't until my recent role, I work with a nonprofit veteran organization here, and veterans really opened up my eyes to how many problems, not just that they have in their daily healthy life, but I'm sure millions of just our general population have, and sleep was one of them. So that is how I got into the sleep world. Is every time I would talk to them about how they're doing health wise, sleep was always the number one thing that got brought up in our coaching calls, and they just couldn't figure out how to sleep well ever since they came back from their tours overseas. So I'm a problem solver. I'm a fixer. I like to fix people is what I claim. I know I can't fix people, but that's just how I am in my mind, and I want to come up with solutions. So I have just been immersing myself in sleep, trauma, PTSD related things. That's really what I focus on, is mental health and sleep, because there is such a big connection to it. If your mental health is not strong, sleep is definitely one of the first things to go. And I think we probably have all been there in our life about, seasons of our life where our mental health wasn't very good and we weren't sleeping very good. So I just like to bring the two together, and that's kind of how I got started.
That's amazing. Yeah, amazing. Patricia has a question. Yeah, right now before we start. Good.
Thank you so much. I've been dealing with insomnia myself and my son for decades, and I never heard of sleep coach. So I'm so excited to be here today. Do you mentioned mental health and mental health sleep related issues. What about sleep apnea and snoring? Do you work with those type of conditions as well?
Yeah. So I should have been more general. I definitely help with all insomnia. Sleep apnea is highly prevalent in the veteran population, so we definitely work a lot. And there's actually, unfortunately, I won't have the time here to talk about it, but we can talk about it offline. There's actually different types of sleep apnea. So everyone thinks there's just one. There's actually several different types. So just making sure you get diagnosed with the right one, and then doing treatment and working on it that way. But yeah, no, I've Insomnia is a huge one in the veteran community because their trauma consistently keeps them up at night, or PTSD. So yeah, no, I work with all different types of people with sleep issues.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So look at my role today. I'm just going to say what sleep is. Sleep is the natural state of rest that helps our body repair and restore. And it is crucial for memory consolidation, mood regulation, and physical health. Joanna, it's your turn.
Tell me.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes, absolutely. You want to expand on this?
Yeah, sure. No, I'll briefly expand on this. So if you begin to start following me on social media, specifically Instagram, I had created a post that went pretty viral about my perception of health and how I look at a pyramid of health. Is I look at sleep on the bottom. If your sleep is all over the place, your nutrition gets off course, as well as your desire to want to intentionally exercise. So that's kind of how I see it: is sleep goes, food goes, and then fitness doesn't even exist. You don't even want to exercise because you're tired, you're exhausted, you're eating a lot of high processed sugary foods, because there's actually a lot of stuff going on when you sleep. When you sleep helps with hormone regulation. So if you're not sleeping, your hormones are all over the place. And then I know for myself, when I get a bad night's of sleep, I just want fast food. I want donuts and pancakes and all the not great foods that are technically for you. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to just highlight here, is that sleep is really, in my opinion, the biggest driving force. If your sleep is not well, it's going to really screw up everything else, unfortunately, in your healthy lifestyle choices.
Yep.
Oh yes, lots of reasons. Is it Patricia? Do you say the C, or Patricia? I know Patricia is the very English term of it. Is it Patricia? Okay. I know you mentioned earlier, just kind of, some sleep apnea, insomnia. I mean, the list goes on. There's so many different sleep disorders out there, and a lot of it actually can be cured just by doing things at home, things you don't need medications for, or medications. It could be done with certain exercises. It could be done with certain, and I'm not saying like go lift weight exercises, just certain breathing techniques. We know that the thickness of the neck is a highly contributing factor to why people have sleep apnea, because as your neck grows, if you're overweight and obese, your neck grows. It's also closing in your airways, which makes it much harder to sleep. But there are other things that we can't sleep. I'm sure you guys can think of financial stress. Stress in general is probably the biggest one that I see. I know when I have a stressful period in my life, my sleep is very out of whack. So if you're not managing your stress, that's a big factor of why you can't sleep. I don't know if anyone, I'm sure everyone on here at some point in their life hits the pillow and their brain just goes, let's start thinking of everything. So it's doing tools and using tools and techniques to try to wind down, which I'll talk a little bit about in the future. What you eat too. So like I mentioned before, if your diet is full of highly processed foods, you're not eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, you're not drinking enough water too. Something I've been playing around with recently is I haven't been hydrating very well, and that's just affected everything in my life. So even just how much you are staying hydrated. And the rule of thumb is, if you take your body weight in ounces, so I apologize if you're in kilograms. If you're in kilograms, times that by 2.2, but take your body weight in pounds, and then divide that by 2. So if you're a 200-pound person, divide that by 2, that's 100 pounds. You should be drinking about 100 ounces of water a day. And you can get that through water, through fruit, through vegetables. So just kind of a little fun tip in there for getting more water in. How often you move. Do you sit on the couch or sit in an office all day and don't go outside and get some sunlight? If you're very, very sedentary, your body's meant to move. If you look back thousands of years on our ancestors, they were constantly moving. So that is a huge factor, especially if you don't put anything aside of intentional exercise. That can be kind of hard too. And what content you look at too. So something I was talking to Leah here earlier this week, there's a big thing going around right now in the social media world about a doctor coming on to Mel Robbins' podcast. Mel Robbins is a phenomenal human. If you don't know who she is, she's a very motivational psychologist. And she talked with this doctor about how people are addicted to watching trauma shows like Law and Order, those Criminal Mind kind of unsolved mysteries right before bed. And you kind of have to rephrase it. Is trauma trying to put you to sleep? Is something very, very almost disturbing, very stimulating the mind? Is that something that you enjoy going to bed or watching right before bed? So she kind of posed the question is, maybe you should do something a little bit more relaxing. So even just kind of how we're looking at things. I know a lot of people get in the habit of looking at Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever social media platform right before bed, and they see that so-and-so is pregnant with their 5th child, and it just starts fireballing in the brain and everything like that. So we have to be mindful, and that's, in my opinion, the biggest problem in our world today is nobody's very mindful of what they're doing. They're just kind of going with the life and the flow and not stopping and actually thinking, like, is this benefiting me? What am I doing right now for that? So I know we mentioned at the bottom here, also having to look at past behaviors too. Leah, I'm going to pick on you because I know you and I talked a little bit about just kind of culture and staying up late. We were talking about her upbringing and how eating at like 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night is very normal. So, there's different culture aspect too around the world of like eating late. I know I have a lot of family over in Europe and the Middle East, and same thing, they don't eat till like 9 o'clock. And that was something very eye-opening my mom shared with me. And so kind of all of our experiences, and again, I'm reading a phenomenal book about trauma right now, but it's talking about like, even as a kid, if you experience things, routines, not feeling safe, I mean, we could go down that rabbit hole. That's all gonna affect you in your adult life, whether you know it or not. So it's really just kind of looking at the whole picture. If I was working with you, Patricia, on insomnia, definitely ask like, how, where did this start? Where could you pinpoint that? And let's go all the way back type of thing. So it's definitely a multi-year looking back and reviewing of how we got to where we are today. Leah Lovely pointed or pulled this from my Instagram, and it just kind of shows a lot of different factors that can really relate to poor sleep. And I think stress is everything. Stress is the main trigger for all, in my opinion, all illnesses, diseases, cancers, things like that. Sometimes cancer you can't really control, unfortunately, but stress is a huge thing. Your cells, all the way down to your microscopic cells, every single cell that makes up your body, it deals with the stress, it deals with the trauma, it deals with whatever you're going on. So that is again, I will emphasize that till the day I'm no longer here. Stress is the main pointer, but medications too. So if you've been on medications your whole life, even as simple as ADHD medication, I don't know, some of the other common ones, if you're on a painkiller, things like that, all of that will affect 100% your sleep. Pain, injury, I mean, these are all pretty self-explanatory, but there's a lot of factors going on. And so something that I like to ask people that I work with is just tell me what's going on, because that's how we can kind of get to where we are today. So although I'm not directly working with you, you can kind of do this with yourself, is kind of lay everything out, take some time and figure out what are some potential literally pain points or triggers that could be affecting your sleep. So what does amazing, looking on the flip side, factors of sleep kind of look like? Like I mentioned before, we're looking at intentional exercise, making sure we're staying hydrated. Again, if you can try to get half of your body weight in ounces, again, taking pounds, divide that by 2, and then that's roughly the amount of liquid you should be consuming a day. Sunlight exposure. So I would definitely, I'm sorry, Patricia, you've just been very open, so I'm going to pick on you about getting sunlight first thing in the day. So with insomnia patients or people who have insomnia, one thing that is recommended is try to stick to the same wake up time no matter what time you went to bed. And I'm sure maybe you've been taught that by somebody. So you're going to get up at 7 o'clock no matter what time. If you went to bed at 2 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the day before, whatever it is, you are getting up at 7, and the first thing you're doing as soon as you wake up is go outside, or if it's too cold, go to a window, a sunny window, and just stand there for 10 to 15 minutes. That's been really helpful. It kind of a non-clinical medical advice is just go outside, and the sunlight and the timing of where the sun is will start to trigger parts of your brain. Okay, I need to be awake at this time. And same with the evening time too, trying to dim the lights at night. That's another big problem, is we have a light problem here, at least in the States, is everyone keeps their light on until like midnight, and try to dim everything down, mimic the outside. So I would say with anyone troubled sleep, sticking with the same wake up time and definitely getting outside first thing in the morning as soon as you can. All right, the burning question, can we wake up without an alarm? It's 100% possible. You definitely have to do a lot of additional things. It's not going to happen overnight, but your body really likes routine. So after a while, if you're getting up roughly at the same time, I'm just going to use myself as an example. I roughly wake up at the same time every morning, and that's just been routine and a habit. My body kind of knows it's time to get up. And I also don't keep my room, I keep my room dark, but it's also not super dark where the natural sunlight can come in. And my body just kind of senses that. You actually have light receptors, not only in your eyeballs, but in your skin. So if you have some light, like a night light or anything like that, it can disrupt sleep. But in the morning time, if the natural sunlight's coming in, it's actually penetrating your skin and allowing you to say, hey, like it's time to get up. So you can, it just takes a lot of time, and it just really starts with consistently with an alarm, and then eventually your body will get so used to the routine that you don't have to wake up with an alarm.
That's great news to me.
Yay, yes,
Yeah.
a burden question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, my mom is a perfect example because she gets up at the same time, and she hasn't used an alarm clock in the time that I was born. So 30 plus years ago, she's never used an alarm clock, and she just gets up the same time every single day.
Nice.
Yeah, power nap. So again, for those who have insomnia or deal with a lot of sleep disorders or sleep conditions, napping can be a tough one for you specifically, just because if your sleep is already so far off, it's kind of all over the place. It's really hard to throw in a nap in there. And the reason why is, in most healthy people, you get up in the morning and let's just say your sleep pressure is 0, right? When you wake up in the morning, you've got a full 7 to 9 hours, however long you slept, you wake up and your sleep pressure is at 0, meaning you're not tired when you wake up, or you shouldn't be tired. Well, as the day goes on, that sleep pressure builds. And so it goes from 0 to 100 when you're about to lay down to go to bed for the night. What a nap does is it actually drops that sleep pressure closer back to 0, because you're taking some of the sleepiness away from yourself. So for those who have sleep disorders, we want you to feel tired at night. We don't want to we prefer you not to nap because we want you to be sleepy at nights. But if you're someone who's got a lot going on, taking a very quick 10 to 15 minute nap is not a bad thing. It can actually boost creativity. So if you're in the middle of taking a test or studying for something, or maybe you have to have a really tough conversation with someone, just taking a 10 to 15 minute nap lets your brain get into the creativity mode and help kind of problem solve. It's happened to me a couple of times where I've been reading something that I'm stuck on. I'll sleep for 10 to 15 minutes and wake up feeling like I have the answer. And that happens actually quite frequently. So power naps, you could also take a longer nap, about 90 minutes long. And the reason why you can take a bit longer nap is your sleep cycle lasts about 90 minutes. So we go through 3 to 5 90-minute cycles a night. And that's where you go from light to deep to deepest to REM. And REM just stands for rapid eye movement. That's typically the stage that you sleep the most in. So one of those cycles lasts about 90 minutes. And that's why if you've ever taken a nap and you've woken up 30, 45 minutes into it, and you wake up and you have no idea where you are, you have no idea what planet you're on, what time it is, you've kind of entered a not good zone. I guess the best way to explain it is your sleep, you just woke up in the middle of the cycle when you're the most groggy. So 10, 15 minute naps all the way up to 90 minutes. These are good questions. What should our goal be for a good night's sleep? So kind of moving to the third one here. Really, goal for a good night's sleep is obviously going to be very individualized to those who are on the call, but making sure you do have something to wind down with. So at least an hour or two before bed, and if that's too much a stretch, starts with 30 minutes before bed, try to do something to quiet your mind. Like I mentioned earlier, most of us don't have a quiet mind before bed. It's our time, because it's too quiet, that we start thinking of everything. So really create that wind down routine. And there's actually some cool step-by-step that I can provide if people are interested later on, of just kind of how to develop a wind down routine. But wind down routine, dimming the lights, do things that are going to make you sleepy. Don't do things that are going to make you stimulated. Like I mentioned, don't watch trauma shows or criminal unsolved mystery kind of type of shows. Those are very stimulating and they get our heart rate up, and things like that. Yeah, and supplements. So supplements are such a big thing in the world today, because I feel like it's, oh, if I could take this pill, I'll be fine. Some things that are helpful, again, those of you who have sleep troubles, tart cherry juice has actually been a big thing lately. So pure tart cherry juice, try not to get it from concentrate, because concentrate typically just has a lot of sugar. But tart cherry juice, that about 1 to 2 ounces, so just like a little shot before bed of tart cherry juice, has naturally occurring melatonin. And I've heard a lot of people, sleep disorders or healthy individuals, take it and they feel like they can fall asleep within 10 to 15 minutes taking it. So tart cherry juice right before bed is like an hour or two before bed can help. What else? Sleepy time tea, things like that. We want to stay away from melatonin, like gummies and melatonin pills that are found in the store. They just released a study a couple months ago that a bunch of scientists pulled a bunch of the most common melatonins off the shelf, and they realized that I think a small handful out of the 28 that they pulled, I think 3 or 4 actually had the proper dose of melatonin. So some contain 300% melatonin, others contain 2%. So there's really not a regulation between the different brands. So I try to avoid melatonin at all costs, because it's something your body can get used to, and your body will stop producing it itself if you're starting to rely on other things. So supplements aren't necessarily a bad thing. It's just being mindful of what you're taking.
Nice. Maybe we can ask questions now or in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, Patricia has a question right now. Go ahead.
Thank you. Joanne, right? Joanna, I'm sorry. Joanna, can you tell us a little bit about raising our legs? And I'm not talking about, the relaxation technique, your feet up on the wall. But I have heard and I have experienced that when you elevate your legs, somehow improves your sleep. In my case, it does happen. I lay down on a love seat, and automatically I have to put my feet up, and it's almost like, whoa, why can I have that sensation that, organically inducing me to sleep when I'm in bed? Is there a I don't know, medical scientific reason why by elevating the legs improves the sleep?
That's a good question. I don't have the scientific definition exactly, but I can definitely give you some reasons why that may help you fall asleep. And
Okay.
it's definitely a common practice. Like I know specifically like in yoga and a lot of mobility, like that's one of the end poses is just to put your legs up on the wall, or just put your legs up in general. So a couple of reasons is you're now, when you think about it, when you sit and stand, all of your feet are getting the brunt of the blood work. The blood goes down and then the blood has to come back to the heart, and it's a long trip essentially. So putting your feet up essentially relieves that pressure of trying to fight against gravity. So now the blood that's might be kind of pooling and sitting there all day is now coming back to the heart to get rejuvenated, fresh oxygenated blood. You're bringing fresh oxygenated blood back to the feet area, and which can kind of help with circulation, and circulation is obviously important for sleep, mainly because when you sleep at night, your brain actually is very active as you are awake, and the brain needs a lot of blood at night because there's a lot of stuff going on in the brain. So pulling that uncirculated blood in the feet back to the brain can definitely help with sleep. Another thing it does is with your lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system is the system that cleans out all of the bacteria, the gunk, the toxins. It helps kind of with the lymphatic system pull all of that gunk back to the heart, to the brain, all that stuff to kind of help with the drainage system. So I think more so it's a blood thing where your blood's getting back to the heart, it's getting fresh oxygenated, it's getting circulated again. So I think that could definitely play a part in being sleepy.
Yeah, that makes sense. So maybe I should mimic or, elevate, do something with my bed that mimics, the position, just elevate my feet when I go to bed, right?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't sleep like that. I wouldn't recommend sleeping like that for like keeping your legs up the entire time.
No, I'm not talking 90 degrees. I'm
Okay.
talking maybe, 30, 40 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, just even that much too. Like I said, you're taking the stress off of you're taking the stress off of your legs, and the legs are honoring the fact that they're elevated and blood is not working against gravity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now
Thank
that
you.
you mentioned that, I've tried that when I feel like my legs are heavy, probably due to circulation genes that came this way. I cannot hold it for so long. Even if it's just a big pillow, I can put my feet on the big pillow, but then during the night, I would just move away from that. I wouldn't keep it all night there. And another thing is that my mom, for example, she likes to sleep with her, like, it wouldn't be, it's a piece of wood, but I think a hardcover book, a thick book would do the trick. Something that elevates the legs of the bed legs. So that would make you all straight, but with your head lower than your feet, kind of, right? It's different from breaking the position from your hips, right? Does it make sense? Yeah, I don't know if there's a difference there, if it, in both cases, is blood going back to your brain, if that's the reason, right?
Yeah, so I know like legs being elevated and then making sure your like torso, they say that if you slightly elevate, like that's why we have our head
Oh.
on the pillow. Yeah, kind of like a V almost. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I know definitely for those who have like heartburn or stomach or acid reflux disease and things like that, to be elevated slightly, like the upper body slightly being elevated, is helpful to prevent any
Yeah.
of that kind of feeling.
Nice, very nice. I was mute. We are here again if you have more questions, but let's have a look at the oils. Our essential oils are supplements too, right? And here are some nice tricks that would induce a sleep somehow. If you massage your big toe, especially with a wooden oil like vetiver or cedar wood, it's funny because Joanna told me vetiver was the very best experience ever, and to me it was cedar wood. So I know I need to try vetiver, and or copaiba too. It's something that will be going straight to your brain and cause that relaxation. Um, a diffuser, if you turn on a diffuser 30 minutes before going to bed, that's going to create the environment you need in your room. And there you can choose oils like Serenity or Breathe and Lavender. Roman chamomile, I love for kids. And wild orange too. Wild orange is an oil that if you put on your neck, it would avoid nightmares. So the smell is like a creative thing. And I believe in the citrus oils being uplifting. They will give you energy when you have to be awake. They will calm you down when it's time to unwind and sleep. So those are nice for your diffuser. And I also found that petitgrain combined with lavender or petitgrain combined with bergamot can be an also sleep-inducing combination. If you put this on your pillow, as it is suggested, I think it's going to stain your pillow because these are very orangey, except for lavender. Lavender wouldn't stain your pillows. But maybe you have a cloth or something that you can put the oil in and just have nearby. And so if you wake up at night, during the night, you can still smell deeply on that piece of cloth, and just that would do the trick. And what Joanna was saying about your mind still, even if you are falling asleep, but that's maybe when your mind activates and remembers so many things, or all the stress. A very nice combination to help you with sleeping and relaxing your brain from all those thoughts is a pill of serenity. So you take that internally, which will be reinforcing from inside everything you're doing from outside, like the lights, dimming the lights, or any oils that you're using, or the breathing techniques, together with copaiba. Copaiba is an oil that always reinforces the effect of other oils. So I found it myself, and I've heard very good testimonials from a lot of people. 1 serenity and 2 copaiba would knock you down in a very good way. So let's start with our night routine tonight and see if we can sleep better tonight. Can we expand about this, Joanna?
Absolutely. So just to kind of recap, I know I threw probably too much information at you all, but I always like to have some kind of application piece, right? You learn a bunch of stuff, or you heard me talk for the last, several minutes. What are you going to do about it, right? Everyone learns information, but what's the application piece? So if sleep is something that you have serious issues with, like I mentioned earlier, and I can't emphasize enough, you have to kind of look at your entire day, or your last couple weeks, maybe. If it's a season thing, if it's a lifetime thing, what could you be doing better? Like I mentioned, analyze your wake up time. Is it the same? Is it different? What time are you going to bed at night too? So keeping a consistent bedtime and wake up time, even on the weekend. So if you're someone who does work during the week and then decides to stay up late and then sleep in on the weekends, that definitely can affect your sleep overall. Caffeine intake, for those who really enjoy coffee in the morning, I always encourage people to try to wait a little bit in the morning, just because your stress hormone cortisol is very high in the morning, and caffeine will always lose the battle of cortisol. Cortisol and stress hormone is way more potent than caffeine ever will be. So just trying to wait a little bit for that caffeine intake. But even when you last take caffeine too, if you're someone who drinks a pot of coffee right before bed, caffeine has a half-life of 6 to 10 hours, depending on who you are. And so it's still going to stay in your system. If you take a sip at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it's going to stay in your system well past midnight. How much you're consuming of food a day, what time you're eating too. So general rule of thumb is to try to stop eating roughly around 2 hours before bed, just because, like I mentioned earlier, all of the blood is in your brain trying to process the day. So if there's a lot of blood in your stomach, that can potentially cause some problems and cause some digestive aches and pains throughout the night. Is there a way you can add intentional exercise? Maybe that's just more walking, or maybe you do more brisk walking, or you add some stretching. Stretching before bed is also supposed to be very calming, right? It helps release tension, especially if you have a lot of stress. Stress is carried in the cells, like I mentioned. So stretching can release some of that stress, essentially, the physical aspect of stress. And just kind of like analyze your wind down routine. Again, if you could do anything right now, it'd just be like, what am I doing before bed? Am I sitting there scrolling aimlessly and then I realize it's 1 o'clock in the morning, I probably should go to sleep? Put a timer on your phone, try to do something intentionally, read a book instead, or listen to quiet music or something like that. So that's my challenge for you guys, is to just try to do something tonight or tomorrow morning that is going to help benefit you with your sleep.
Yeah, great. I remember there was something in your charts about healthy relationships or connection with people. That's something also, I would add that to this list of things to review every night and see, okay, how was my social life today? Did I enjoy it? I did not. What happened? And where did I get joy from interacting with people? Don't you think?
Oh, 1,000%. And again, I'm going to put this plug in here. It's called the Harvard study, and it's been going on for, I think, over 80 years. It's a really cool TED talk on it too. I think it's like a 10-15 minute long TED talk, but the guy who's currently the director of the study, it keeps changing because it's such a long study and they keep promoting people. But essentially he said, it's called the happiness study. And he found that doesn't matter your background, your upbringing, the most impactful thing in your life to keep you healthy and live a long, good life is your support system. Who is in your community? Who are the relationships? Getting rid of toxic people, but also strengthening the relationships you currently have. He found that people who were very close with their families or had really good friends, maybe they weren't blood related families, but they just called a group of people their family and were connected with them, was the main consistent driving factor in all of these people who come from very different backgrounds, demographics, different countries' life. So yeah, I can't emphasize that enough. Thank you, Leah, for mentioning that.
Of course. No, thank you for expanding on it. Yeah. There is something in the chat here. Oh, gratitude journal. Thank you for mentioning that. Joanna and I were briefly discussing that sometimes we can analyze all our routine with our minds, but how much better it is when we write the things down. Like we become more aware of the things we write down more than the ones that stay in our minds. Yeah, thank you. Great. So here we are. Thank you for listening and sweet dreams. This is Joanna's Instagram. Well, mine you know already, I guess. So if you have more questions, I think this is the time to go through those. And I'll stop the recording for the sake of time and more privacy.